Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of APB. So in this episode, we have a very interesting episode where essentially Gideon's got his own convention thing going on, which is kind of weird to me to think like Gideon has his own convention. It's called the Win City Tech Summit. But then again, it's like, what is a convention? Just a gathering of people who like certain things, you know? In this particular case, it's like Gideon and tech. So it's like, I mean, you know, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. I guess if you really break down any convention, that's kind of what it is. But it's just kind of, I don't know. I guess I didn't think of him as, you know, being the tech business mogul that he is. It's just kind of like, I mean, for him, he doesn't really care much about the business side. He just cares about the like inventing and making stuff side. But nevertheless, there's basically a person there's this guy named Josh who was killed. He was going to the convention. Basically, he was selling his, there are these bands that everyone gets. Different bands allow you different access, and his gave you like an all-purpose access of getting in and being able to get close to Gideon. So that's what this person is all about. So it's now a situation of trying to basically find this guy out before he can get to Gideon. Many different things I want to bring up. For one, we meet Lauren, who works at VIDS Industry. She's actually pretty top of the line, like, you know, employees there. She acts as kind of like, I go as far as saying like Gideon's kind of right hand in the situation, because she refers to herself as kind of the money person, played by Ken Raver. Because I kept looking at her, I was like, I feel like I know you from certain things. And I think what it is 24. Not Legacy, but just all previous 24. I think the last time she ever popped up in a show, I could be completely wrong. I've not seen everything there is about 24, but I think the last time she popped up was like season 6. So kind of a bit of a thing between her and Jack. So once again, just kind of interesting how that whole Fox thing angle plays. Also love the fact is that literally like partway through the episode, it's like, you know, he's like explaining things to her. He's like, have you ever watched an episode of Bones? I had to take a second. I was like, wait, did you just say? I was like, shut up, did you just say that? Making your network referential stuff. Which, little side note, I do need to go back and watch Bones. I need to go back. I kind of fell behind on it, especially when I found out a certain one of the main characters ended up dying. Won't spoil it for anyone that cares, but it's like, that also made me a little sad because it's like a character that I really like. So I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. I mean, he did it for the character. Well, I'm gonna say, yeah, he did it for his own reasons because like the actor wanted to be able to do other stuff too. So at least that's what I've heard. Nevertheless, the point is, you know, something I need to get back to. That's all I gotta say. Really love the show. Highly recommend it to you if you've never watched any Bones. It's on Netflix if you decide that you want to watch it. Enough about that discussion. Moving on with the episode. But it was kind of interesting seeing, like, in this episode, we kind of see, like, two of the most important women in Gideon's life. You have Lauren representing the Reeves Industry aspect, and you have Murphy obviously representing the 13th, and they not really getting along. Which, side note, it's also interesting seeing that little flirtatious relationship between Gideon and Lauren. Whether it's something serious or not, like, I don't know. Like, cause she brings up the fact is like, oh yeah, he's like, oh, you have a problem with she's like, I've always had a problem with authority. She's like, I forgot what it was, basically referencing the fact is that, you know, if she stopped, you know, having such a problem with authority, like I forgot, I'm not going to butcher it. It was just, essentially it was referencing the fact that they sleep together. I don't know whether it's like a serious thing or just kind of a casual thing. It seems like it might be a casual thing, mainly because it's like, I want it to kind of be a casual thing because it's like, I want him and Murphy together. It's just like, you see it, you look at it, it's like, I always want to pair characters up that I like, and I like the way Murphy and Gideon work together, so I'm automatically like, yeah. Oh yeah, Lauren's fine. Be with Murphy. It's like, hey, she's divorced. You're possibly single. I mean, you know, like I said, I get the feeling. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 100% wrong, and there's more to it than that. But to me, it seems very casual. It did bring up an interesting conversation that she, like, once again, going back to the fact is that she and Murphy were kind of at each other a little bit in this episode, because for her, she kind of undermines the 13th to a certain degree. Because for her, she's all about, you know, because she's the money person. She's the one that basically puts forth the money that lets Gideon to do the things that he wants to do, and she pays for it, essentially. She's the one that's like, basically this whole episode, she's like, Gideon, you need to focus more on Reeves Industries. You've been losing a lot of money since you put so much focus on this whole, you know, trying to be a cop situation. Because, you know, because he's also been taking a lot of their tech and stuff and putting a lot of their money towards, you know, the 13th rather than towards Reeves Industry. So it's also about her being like, okay, we need to get things rolling in that direction too. But also, you know, she looks at the 13th, and it's something that's come up before. It's like, Gideon bounces from different things to different things all the time. Eventually, he's going to get bored and move on from this. Is kind of what she is thinking. So it's like, yeah, it's like a situation where it's like she respects Murphy and all she does, which on some occasions is kind of like she did, because even she's like, oh, does she know what she's doing? And Ada's kind of like, yeah, she's really good at what she does. So it would have been a perfect opportunity to be like, yo, shut up and just let Murphy do her thing. But it was just interesting to see them being back and forth, because, like I said, it's like in this one episode you saw his two worlds colliding, because we've never seen too big of connections between Reeves' industry and his job, him working at the 13th. Suppose it's obviously we've seen some of the inventions and stuff like that, especially Pete. Pete's like one of the few connections, but he doesn't really interfere in this regards, because like for her main purpose, and she says it, is to protect Gideon. It's like obviously people come after him about patents and stuff like that, plus like all these different projects, lawsuits and stuff like that. She's always there to protect them, and basically saying that when it's all said and done, almost like she was kind of shooting shade towards Murphy, kind of being like, when it's all said and done, I'm going to be the one that's by his side when it's all said and done, mainly because he's going to need me, because I'm the one that, helps, protect him, even if it means protecting him from himself sometimes. So I'm sure she's one of the people that was super against this whole idea from the beginning of buying the 13th, essentially. But now, I mean, when it was all said and done, she kind of got a different perspective of it, but then I'll kind of get into that later on. But what I liked about, for one, I love the fact is that he took that hologram version of his head and used it as a way of scanning the entire convention. I thought that was pretty cool, doing that. Basically, he changed the kind of like the wavelength it's on, so it's not like, because if he didn't, it'd be pretty obvious. Like there'd probably be lasers shooting out from the system that the hologram is set up on and making it so it pinpoints everyone, so it'd be very noticeable. But he changed the wavelength so it was kind of, I guess, invisible to the normal eye, to a regular eye. And I mean, granted, that didn't work out, because basically a girl ended up snatching up the band and stuff like that, because she just wanted to get, with the all access thing, she'd have access to more like, gear and stuff that she wouldn't be able to get, like, by just being on a normal floor of the convention, essentially. So having access to the cooler stuff that she normally wouldn't be able to have access to. But then later on, they wanted to use Gideon's speech as a means of drawing out the killer. Basically, there was these guys that Gideon really didn't pay too much attention to their invention when they were basically explaining it on the floor, which I kind of didn't either, because the only thing I really drew from it was like, oh man, like how bored Gideon was, because that's all he could focus on. He's like, oh, I can't pay attention. I can't talk to you right now, Lauren. I'm asleep because I'm so bored listening to these guys talk. Turns out basically their device acts as kind of a means of being able to track a gun. It's like a much smaller device, allowing you to I guess a little more compact than like a big scale kind of machine to be able to detect that. And so he uses himself as bait during his speech to kind of act as bait. But it was kind of this sweet moment between him and Murphy, where he was basically like, oh, and Murphy's like, yeah, okay, so I'm giving you my best. She's like, wait, no, Murphy, you need this. Because I mean, his main reason for doing this is because he's like, yo, the fact of the matter is, how should I not take this risk? He is part of the 13th now, and it's like, you take this risk every day, so why shouldn't I, do it too? It means stopping a bad guy, because he's like, this guy's obviously very smart, but the fact of the matter is, if it's not me, who's to say he won't, end up hurting someone else? So at the very least, we need to stop him. Another thing is because, he brings up something very interesting too, that basically, I think it's something he had never really thought about before, but spending time with Lauren kind of put it in more perspective, is the fact is that Reeves' industry, like, is kind of a big part of the 13th. So he has to make sure everything works with Reeves, because if Reeves' industry doesn't do well, that means things won't like pan out well for the 13th either. So it's like the 13th's future, as well as everyone that's there, their future is dictated by Reeves' industry. So it's a situation where I think going forward, he will be a little more observant of that type of situation. Because like I said, it doesn't seem like he really paid. Like obviously he throws out the fact that, oh, like I'm a billionaire, stuff like that. But I think it's a situation where he doesn't really care that much about money. I think he likes the fact is of building stuff and just inventing. It's just, it's that nerdy side of him that kind of kicks in. And then there's, but then he was also bringing up the fact that the reason why he can do this is because he knows Murphy's going to have his back. And Murphy's like, of course I'm going to have your back. And I'm like, and they're just staring at each other a little bit. I'm like, come on, it's there. That's what I'm talking about, that exact moment, that little spark. But luckily enough, they were able to catch a guy. I mean, granted, he was able to get a shot off at Gideon, but luckily Gideon had Murphy's vest, so it was okay. Ribs are a little sore, but he was okay. And Murphy ended up bringing up the question to him too. It's like, well, the fact of the matter is, he heard about the other projects from Lauren that he basically abandoned and stuff like that. And she's wondering if the 13th is going to be the same. And he's like, no. Basically, the reason why he gave up on those projects is because they were easy. Like, there was no challenge behind it. But he's like, this police work, everything they do, he's like, he really recognizes how hard it is. So he's like, I don't have any plans of going anytime soon. And then she's like, I'm going to be here for a long while, and which Murphy's happy to hear, obviously. So it's a very interesting side of that story. Before I move on, I will elaborate on the fact is we had that ending bit where it's like, Lauren's kind of like, oh, you're such a genius, because she's like, now the fact is I've seen what happens when Gideon Tech kind of merges with the police. It's like, oh, why don't we just go through the trouble of making our own private police unit that basically we can sell. We can take this whole APB app situation and make it more of a worldwide international thing, and make a boatload of money, which is kind of like her. Like I said, she's the money person. So obviously she's looking at everything from a business perspective rather than kind of like the reason why Gideon did it in the first place. And that wasn't for a business perspective. It was from an emotional perspective of like, he lost his friend and he wanted to get justice for him, but also make it so that the cops had enough money and stuff to do what they need to protect the city. So, I saw the preview for the next episode. I won't elaborate on anything, but to me, it did seem like it kind of left Gideon a little perplexed a little bit at the end, because it's like, oh, she's so happy about the idea, but it doesn't seem like he was all that happy about it. Because, it's hard to say. Like, 'cause to me, it's like, it could also be interpreted as him being like, oh, maybe me taking this international would be a good thing. Maybe it would be me being able to help out other people. Plus, it increased the challenge of it. It's like, yeah, this is hard enough, but I can add even more to it. So, I don't know. It was just kind of an interesting thing that just like, it does seem like it left Gideon a little perplexed. I am thinking that maybe it'll also be a situation where it is kind of like, more so he is thinking like, I don't really 100% agree with Lauren. I wish she didn't really have that idea, but okay, I'll go with it. But, because, a lot of people, especially Scott, will kind of think like, no. The reason why you're so okay with this is because of Murphy. It's kind of a leading reason why, which is like part of the reason, but it's like, she's just one of many different reasons why the 13th is kind of so important to him. I also want to admit, I thought it was kind of interesting seeing Ada and Murphy kind of working together a little bit in this episode. It's almost like, like how Murphy and Gideon got to work together. Because it's like Ada doesn't obviously get out that much. She is kind of more of the tech supporter. She acts as the hacking side of things, which I did like the fact that she's like, yeah, I could do this and that to get into the laptop. They're like, oh, the password is blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, we get to do that. But this is kind of interesting because it's like we never really see her obviously like leave the precinct that much and also just kind of really interact. She interacts with the others, but not to the extent like she didn't. I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thing. I'm wondering if we're going to see something like that continue forward like that. Mainly because Gideon was out of the office, so they couldn't really rely on him. And it's like, oh, then, Ada's here. She's pretty smart and very good with computers and stuff like that. So, I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thing that I just kind of want to also point out. But that's just one half of the story of this episode. The other half of it dealt with a boy named Evan, who they got like a call on who called in the suicidal hotline. And at first Brent kind of brings up the fact that he hates suicide stuff because it's just, it's just like, I kind of get where he's coming from. Basically, it's like, it's so sad, like, it's just like, because in those situations, it's like, you kind of feel like you can't do anything for someone. It's like, because someone is kind of on their last leg. Brent, you end up finding out his reasonings for it. It's because for him, he knew a lot of people that came back from the military that like ended up coming back home, just things weren't 100% right, and they killed themselves. So that's why it affects him in a different way. And just, adding my own little personal thing to it. Suicide always messes with me. It's a subject that just, I don't know. It breaks my heart just to think that someone had like life. Things weren't to the point that a person felt like they could rely on somebody. That it basically just they had to internalize a lot of stuff and they couldn't take anymore and they killed themselves. And that breaks my heart. Like that's why like suicide stuff always makes me uneasy. Just because I'm just so sad. Like that someone felt they need that was their only option when it's not. It's not the only option. There are plenty of people, you just gotta, I'll get a little preachy a little bit in this because it coincides with the episode. Talk to somebody. If you can't find, family or friends to rely on, get professional help. It helps to talk to somebody because you don't want to bottle that stuff up. I know because I'm a person who's thought those thoughts before and I bottle stuff up. I do not deny that. I've admitted that many times. I bottle a lot of stuff up. So it's just, that's all I really want to say on the subject. So, but I mean, when you look at Evan's situation, you understand why he feels the way he does. Basically, he's gay, and it seems like his dad has such a problem. I should have known something was up the way his dad made that offer mark, and like, oh, he's just being a drama queen. It's like your son, he's thinking like, oh, it's all for attention or something like that. It's like people don't do that stuff for attention. They do it because it's like they want someone to stop them. They want someone to be out there to give them a reaching hand, essentially, kind of to hold on to them, and. His dad wasn't like that for him. I mean, at least obviously by the end of the episode, it was kind of like that. But for him, it seemed like, I mean, obviously his mom doesn't care. His mom loves him. And it's like, also his boyfriend Jackson, because it's like his boyfriend Jackson is, in the closet too. So it's like, that's why he was reluctant to say anything at first, because he didn't want to kind of put it out there, especially like if it's a police matter, it might involve his parents. Last thing he wants is his parents to know, because as you can see, he probably looks at Evan's situation. He sees how Evan's dad feels about the whole thing. So it probably makes him even more reluctant to say anything, too. So we also got like kind of a little insight on Goss too, because she brings up the fact that it's like, yeah, she was like, she wasn't all that happy about coming out about her first girlfriend, which is like, I was about to say, like, it makes me wonder, is she gay or straight or bi? But then I was like, at the end of the day, who gives? Like, it doesn't matter. It's like your sexual orientation is your business, and it doesn't change who you are. So I don't know. Nevertheless, because it seemed like Brent was going to ask her a little bit more about it, but then I think he kind of had the same mentality. He's like, now you're my partner. I don't care about stuff like that. It doesn't change who you are. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, And that's kind of how it should be treated. It's like, yeah, you have your sexual orientation, you have your preference, but that doesn't make you any different from any other person. You like who you like and you love who you love. That's all there is to it. So, I was literally about to quote myself on something else I did in the past where I talked about that. So it's just, I'm getting all over the place. I do apologize. Luckily they were able to, kind of get Evan, because he was about to like jump, but luckily they were able to pull him back. His dad, was trying to talk him down and everything, because, Brent told him about his own situation with guys he knew from the military who ended up killing themselves. And he's like, I look at your son, so I know it's the real deal, that he is pushed in, that he doesn't want to talk to anybody. He just feels like he's cornered and there's no one there to help him. Like I said, especially because he feels like, because he was talking about the fact that his dad went as far as saying, like, you said you'd be better off if things would be better off if I was gone. He even thought, like, he was saying, like, oh yeah, my dad will probably think me killing myself is like the best thing ever, like best option, the best thing I've ever done, the smartest thing I've ever done, which is like no parent would ever think that, I mean, and if they ever did, they were just an outright shitty parent. I guess it's a situation where it's like, he was ignorant to like what he was doing, and like, he even admits, he's like, I said a lot of stupid things, and some people don't realize the weight of their words. So I guess in his father's case, he didn't realize what he was doing, that he was like pushing his son away, making him feel not normal, not making him feel right. The fact is, it seems like obviously his mom is a lot more welcoming, but the fact is, it does seem like his dad is warming up, because even his mom had to be like, what your dad is trying to say is he loves you, because, I guess he's not the type of person that's very good with his words or expressing himself, which is something, like I said, I'm very good with that too. Like, I'm not very good at putting myself out there into words. I'm not very good at expressing myself either. But it does seem like he is trying, and I appreciate it. Which I also love the fact is that because Pete's flying the drone, and how, like, he's like, Brent's like, oh, keep it steady, Pete. He's like, yeah, sorry about that, I'm just getting all emotional. He's like, come on, kid, get down. He's like, yeah. So I also love the fact that we learned that Brent's like super not okay with the drone. He's like, it flying around and stuff like that makes him uneasy. Like, he's okay with some of the other tech, but it makes him very uneasy about things. Because it's like the whole mentality of like, Terminator and stuff like that. The tech will rise and turn against us. It's how it's always been, and it's going to turn out like that. But I'm curious to learn more about Goss. Like, is she okay with her family now? Like, I mean, wherever she falls on the spectrum, wherever, she lies, like, I wonder, is it a situation where her and her family are good or not? That was not something she really went into detail about. So it was something she needed to say, to help kind of ease Jackson and make him realize, like, okay, I've been in the same boat as you. I understand what you're going through. So overall, a very, very good episode, a very powerful episode on that side, and very fun, and also powerful on like the other side of things too. So just overall, a very good episode. I'm very interested. Like I said, I brought up earlier, I did see the previews to the next episode. I won't spoil it for anyone that wants to try and go in as blind. Just because of the way the episode ended, I wanted to see what was going to like go down. So caught some clips and stuff here and there. So very interested to see what goes down. So, But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye. A little side note at the end, I just kind of want to tag on. Once again, I want to reiterate, if you've ever been in that situation, no matter what the circumstances may be, never feel like you have to handle things alone. Do talk to somebody if you ever have those thoughts. If you ever think of like suicide, find someone to talk to. A family friend, family member, a friend, anyone in particular. And if you can't find anyone, do seek out professional help. I mean, even if you do talk to someone as a family or friend, also get professional help too. It can never hurt getting someone else's, like, help with that whole situation, helping you figure stuff out. And that's just my whole piece on it. So just wanted to tag that in too. So